today. It's 75th Independence Day of India. It's a big milestone, and I feel privileged to talk about one of the cultural representation of India, which is saris. As all of us know, any ethnic background usually is represented through food, their costume, their art, and their traditions. And that goes so long way that from generations to generations, it gets carried forward in some shape and some ways, even though people move around the globe. So sari is one such thing, and I'm going to talk about what sari is. One such thing that is truly an ambassador of Indian culture, Indian traditions, and Indian costume. And that I grew up in Mumbai, where I saw my mom, my grandmom, wearing sari every day. My mom wears sari even today. I've never seen her wearing any other costume. But more so, I realized as I used to talk to them or as I was growing up, that saris are not just a costume or a functional garment. It has lots of emotions attached to it. Including, it's like the feel of it is the way it makes you feel. It triggers a lot of memories when you hold a sari or when you wear a sari. And that was kind of a fascinating aspect to me when I started researching more about saris. As a part of growing up, I did my engineering and was working in Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So of course, it was not something, it was like a dormant passion. But last few years, I really took it to understanding every different weaves. What are those different techniques? What's so unique about it? And that's kind of what I wanted to share today with this group is what is a sari, how the sari has evolved in last 75 years of since India's independence, but more so it's a centuries and centuries old fabric. How is that can be identified, and why I decided to even write a book about it. Thank you, Kalika. First, if you see, I kind of try to put it in the agenda. I want to talk about some folks. I don't want to assume that everybody knows what a sari is. So I want to kind of talk about a little bit about how to identify and what is it even considered a sari. Some of us know it very well. Like Soumya is wearing one, I'm wearing one. But some of us, we just have heard the term or seen others. But just knowing a little bit more about what a sari even means. Then talk about how the sari making process works, and how many different types are there, why they are there too many times, and then last 75 years of sari styles and evolution within the globe and especially within India. And then now, where we are today, how is the sustainable fashion growing into the next generation? And then talk about any Q&A if anybody has any questions around it. Okay. Kuldeepa, could you mind going a little bit to the next slide, please? Okay. No, I think just one more up, so where the picture is of the sari is. Yeah. So some of you who have seen a sari, kind of, it looks something similar, but maybe in a different draping style. But first of all, sari it's not a costume that is pre-stitched. It's an unstitched cloth, a continuous fabric per se. And depending on how people wear it, it may look different, but it's typically a 6 yards in length and about 44 inches in height. And so we call it one size fits all. The good part is, like, as we grow in our from young age to the adult, the grown-up adult, you can still continue wearing the same sari from generation to generation, whether it's a tall person or a not so tall person, somebody who is a petite or versus a not so petite. It can still fit you, and that's what one of the beauty of a sari is. It's a single fabric that can be wrapped around, and it takes the shape of the person very easily. It has 3 sections that are named that way. There is no separate part of the fabric, but one which is the base of the sari. If you see here in the green color that you see, it's mostly the main fabric that goes a long way along the length. The 2 corners, 2 borders are usually called borders. Quite a few times they are in the contrast color and not necessarily always. And then there is a end piece that is left hanging for the most part, which is called a pallu. And that's kind of that was constitutes a sari. There are documented at least 100 ways of draping a sari on you. And the picture here shows the most commonly known wearing style, which is a Navy style. But I've linked it here for anybody. There's a entire project talking about it with videos, how to wear saris in a different draping styles. And most of these saris have a name, like how we have a name. Each sari has a name. It's not everything is called just a sari. And the name is based on the design and weaving techniques. And I'll be talking a little bit more about it later in this presentation today. So I won't talk about how is it even sari made. If it's a fabric, what happens? First, a simple thing, any fabric has a warp and a weft. We all know that in the textile industry, that the fabric gets created by weaving horizontal threads with a vertical yarn. When a sari is made, the warp, which is primarily, if you see in this picture around, the horizontal lengthwise fabric is the warp of that sari. And then vertical piece that goes in and out, threading and weaving that material is called weft. So usually on the loom, on the warp is first, all the yarns of the entire 6 yards of the sari are first attached to a loom. And then the weft variations around that creates the design and the pattern on top of it. Can we go to the next slide, please? If you see here, no, sorry, a little bit up, please. Yeah, if you see here, when a sari is made, along with the warp and a weft, there is something called, you can see this like a pencil kind of thing that looks like, it's called shuttle. So if you have to make a design while doing those warp and weft together, around in between some small designs or big designs, that shuttle is passed through between the warp and a weft to make those patterns in between. And that's kind of how each and every sari is made. Now there are different types of looms, and I won't talk about different looms, but that's the fundamental concept. Is the warp and weft is warp is stretched on the loom, weft goes in and out, creating the fabric, and then the shuttle or the pick, sometimes they call it, creates those minute and exquisite design patterns inside it. It's quite laborious work if somebody is doing it on day in, day out, but those who are experts can do a sari, make a one sari, depending on the design complexity, can take from few days to few weeks to few months. It all depends on how variations happen. Now there are different types of looms that are used, and they, depending on the weaving techniques, those looms could be quite different. The 3 common ones that are primarily used, one is pit loom, where the actual loom is inside a pit. So it's like you're sitting in a chair, the weaver is sitting on the ground versus the pit is inside, and they're moving it pedal in, pedal down. It's like how you're doing any swing machine, the older style swing machine. So that's kind of the pit loom. The dobby loom is the one that was on the picture above, where the yarn is grouped together. So they go in together, they go out together, and there is a pattern that creates on the side. And that's kind of the type of the other loom. The most complex designs usually are done through something called jacquard loom. It's a French design, innovation that happened in early 1800th century, which allowed punch cards to be used to make a design. So the warp is stretched on it, the weft goes through the holes and makes the design on that particular sari design. So that's pretty complex. So the more the complex design, the type of tapestry and the brocades that we want to do, the jacquard looms are primarily used for that. And for me, it's very also fascinating that what was used as an innovation in 1800 for textile, which changed the entire revolutionary textile industry, is also has inspired the computer programming. And for me, that's pretty interesting factor that it's all zeros and ones, and punch card is nothing but a zeros and ones. In this case, if the thread goes in or thread doesn't go in and makes a design. And that essentially was the foundation of making the industrial revolution to mass product after it was had more electric part added. By default, you can use a jacquard loom as a device, even in the hand loom. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a powered loom, but it's the device that allows you to put the punch card for the threads to move in and out. So today in India, 99% of the weaving happens in one of the three type of looms, and those are the three looms here. Next one, please. So now I talk a little bit about how the mechanics happen behind making a sari, right? Now, depending on the weaving techniques and this different patterns, different designs that are done, and also very ingrained into cultural aspect of any region within India, the diversity of saris is so vast and varied that each one has its own identity and name associated with it, and also a geographic indication given to that particular sari type. I put some map here of different states or different regions known for a specific type of saris, but that's just a simple version of it. There are many more versions and many more sari types that exist. It will take volumes to write about, and even putting it on a map like that. So this map kind of represents how diverse set of designs and patterns exist in a given sari. And that for me was one of my research topic, to actually go understand, talk to weavers, to go through research, understanding what was the name for, how did it come into history, where did it evolve, and how did it even combine in from the influence it had from this nearby region to the furthest regions in the India. Can you go to the next slide, please? Here it shows about different, like just from looking at this picture, you can see they are not one thing. And each sari here has a name associated with it. But if you see the top designs look more like, hey, there's a design on the main base of the sari, and then there is a design on the pallu of it. In other cases, it shows that the design is completely woven, self-made designs within the brocades around it. And in some cases, it's purely done an embroidery or some embellishments around it. And each of those combinations of weaving techniques, the designs, the patterns it creates, and the motifs, the actual designs that we use to make it, that gives a unique name to a particular sari. Next one, please. So sari existed a long time, probably before we started in the last 2,000 years, even before that. But I thought, it's easier to talk about saris before Indian textile revolution and after textile revolution. But just to talk about it, why it has taken so much importance and how it has evolved in last 75 plus years. I thought this probably would be a good way to just kind of give a perspective on how Saree has stayed in touch with the culture, but also and cultures and tradition, but also evolved along with how local and global economies have evolved. So India got independence in 1947. So somewhere in 50s and 70s, so Indian independence had a lot to do with handmade, internal uh, costumes and fabrics. And that was one of the things that was primary even in the 50s and 70s, which was using the designs and the fabrics that were all handmade, but also it was evolving because that's where quite a few women started working into mainstream jobs. And then that, when it took into the 70s and 80s, it wasn't necessarily always possible to keep using those handloom sarees. So it took a completely different angle, which was actually introducing a synthetic fiber into making sarees very easily affordable, literally like a $2, $3 worth of for a saree, which was quite famous. They were also very colorful and vibrant in nature. And that was what was very famous, as in Garden Vareli used to be the ad at that time. But I think it made a working women sarees affordable to wear every day and still make it easy to maintain it. And then somewhere in the later part of 1900th century, early 2000, saree took a completely more style icon, where you can see the Bollywood had its own share of making sarees. Chiffon sarees were pretty common for that kind of a fab style cool factor in it. But now, in last 10 plus years, India has recognized and also gone back into using sarees from handloom and made its own tradition further carry on. So you see more and more emphasis on non-artificial yarns and using handloom and cotton silk sarees going forward as more as possible. Next slide, please. Now, since with the demand in nature, but also realizing that the sarees cannot, has to be made sustainable fashion, there has been a lot of increased emphasis on natural dyes. That used to be there before independence, but now it's taking even further into using natural dyes, using roots, leaves, flowers and seeds and many minerals as well. And that actually has a lot more lasting colors that can be generated and still kept the vibrancy of colors that were in the last 50 years as a demand for it. And then for economical, eco-friendly cotton sarees are always the most famous and also most daily use, because India is a tropical weather. Silk sarees are usually considered for the events and all. But now there is a lot more innovation happening with plant-based fibers such as hemp, banana, and flax seeds as well. And it creates the same texture as in cotton, and that's amazing to see. Most of the handloom, I would say all of the handloom actually doesn't require or requires very minimal electricity. So imagine in the remotest of the remotest place, if they have a loom that they can work on, even if they have no electricity. And I said minimal because if they're working in the night, they probably need a light next to them, but the actual loom itself can work with a manual actions being triggered. It's a slow fashion. It will last generations and generations. If even a cotton or a silk saree can go from one generation to other generation, and especially if it's handloom, it definitely has a personal touch, because no one saree is like the other saree, even though they have the same patterns on it. And it supports local artisans and weavers, keeping this centuries old art alive going forward. So with that, I want to kind of just show you a little bit about what's my book about. As I said in the beginning, sarees create an emotion. Sarees have a memories associated. So what I wanted to do was write a book about the stories that how I uh, saw each sari, what my emotions and memories are associated with each one of those saris. And what I did was, I took 21 saris across the good representation of each and every state that is famous for its saris, but also took an effort to call out, to get like very, very vivid photographs, because it has to look as if I'm holding a sari in my hand. And that is one of the biggest achievement in the coffee table book, is to actually illustrate the pictures through storytelling. And while doing that, if I can add some more cultural background and history and the specific motifs, why not? So that's kind of how I took that. 2021 was where I wanted to actually get this book out. But it took a little extra time, but not bad. The entire book is done over pandemic, and across 3 continents and 10 different cities working on this project with me. So I feel very blessed that we could actually make it happen. All the if and when all the profit I make out of this book is going to go to a girls' education for the weavers community. And that's what I'm working on with them right now. The link is out here. It's also going to be available tomorrow on Amazon for ebook also. So I know, I understand some people, even though I prefer having a coffee table book, I'm also conservative about paper and using green. So I'm also making this book available on ebook as well. That's about it. I think if I've kind of left it for Q&A at the end.
That was beautiful, Kalika. This is very in-depth